الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. So last week we discussed about that we have 30 rights of a believer that as long as we don't fulfill them or our believer, they don't excuse us from them, we cannot be considered to be a full brother or complete the rights of brotherhood towards one another. And we've mentioned that the first one last week, which was forgiving the mistakes of believing brother or sister in faith. So now this week we'll discuss the second one, which is being merciful and kind to your brother in faith when he is in a foreign land. He is traveling. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيُطْعِمُونَ طَعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. In Surah Insan, Ayat 8, it says, and they give food in spite of love for it to the needy and the orphan and the captive. One day, disbeliever, they just embraced Islam at the hands of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This new convert, he complained of hunger, and Rasulullah sent someone to bring food from his house, but unfortunately, there was no food available at that time. So the Prophet asked his companions, who can host this newly convert brother tonight? So Imam Ali alayhi salam, he came forward and he offered to do this. So taking the convert's hand, he took him to his house and he asked Fatima Zahra alayhi salam if there was any food in the house. She said only a small little bit of food is enough, just enough for the children. Imam Ali alayhi salam said in response that the guest comes first, then ourselves and our children. So the guest is before the family. Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, she, talked to the children, had them go to bed, even sleep while they were hungry that night. And Imam Ali alayhi salam, he dimmed the light of the lantern, and then he invited the guests to eat the meal with him in a dimly lit room. So he couldn't see the Imam too well. He sat with him, the Imam sat with him, and pretended like he was eating. But in fact, he didn't eat anything and he didn't want the guests to go hungry. So Imam Ali, Fatima Zahra, and the children, alayhi salam, they fed this guest for pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while remaining hungry themselves. So the self-sacrifice that they did for their guest was so much appreciated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this verse came down praising them. It says, in Surah Hashr, Ayat 9, those who established a community center and embraced the faith before the arrival of the immigrants love those who have come to their town. They are not jealous of what is given to the immigrants. They give preference to them over themselves, even concerning the things that they themselves urgently need. Whoever controls his greed will have everlasting happiness. So we see the extent of the generosity shown towards the guest from this story, and we are even to give our last to our guests. Unfortunately, we live in a society that now is every man for himself. People only look out for their own interests and they don't care about looking after the rights of other people. However, the true generosity can still be seen today in some places. Just for example, looking at the amazing hospitality of the people of Iraq when we see the pilgrims come to visit Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Arba'in time. And when people witness this, it will really captivate their hearts. I haven't seen anything like it where a person saves all year long just to give it all away. It's unheard of. But they do all of this for the love of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us, those who serve the cause of Abu Abdullah Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So another type of person who falls under this category of being in a foreign land are those who are visiting Islamic centers while traveling. And also converts to Islam who are visiting these Islamic centers for the first time. In both cases, the Islamic center that they are visiting is new to them and they're unfamiliar with community there. For example, I go to some place, I've never been there before. I go to, I don't know, let's say like Indiana, they have a Shia center there, but I have never been there. So I'm new to that place. or some person converts in New York and they go to one of the centers there. They have never been to any center. They're like a stranger in that place, and I've traveled around the world and been to many different Islamic centers and have firsthand seen how the majority of them, they have not been welcoming towards outsiders, some people that they are not familiar with. They don't have they should be welcoming, but they're not, unfortunately. I also have good experiences, but we need to talk about both of them. So, because this right of believer is welcoming and being kind to your brother when he's in a foreign land. So, for example, someone goes to Islamic center, they may not be given their rights of having their salam returned to them, even after telling them you are a Muslim. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that when any one of you meets a Muslim, he should greet him with salam and shake his hand. And salutation at the time of your meeting with one another will be complete only when it's accompanied by handshake. I've had this happen to me on numerous occasions, visiting places uh, while I was in America and also abroad as well. I would give salam to a group of Muslims standing in front of Islamic Center. They would just stare at me, or they would just reply with hello. I asked, all of you are Muslim, right? They say, yeah, yeah, we're Muslim. So I said, okay, I'm also a Muslim and I'm greeting you with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Still no reply. They turn away from me, start talking on their own like I didn't exist. Uh, Another time I went to South America, huge mosque. After Salat, I went to go greet the Sheikh, shake his hand. He wouldn't shake my hand and he wouldn't give me salam. He wouldn't return my greeting. He kept walking. I kept walking beside him, asking, are you okay? I came all the way from America to visit this area and come to your center. Still nothing. Keep walking like I am invisible until he left the mosque. The same person is holding programs for converts. He refused to hold programs for these converts in their own language, and he refused to teach them anything. The majority of those people, unfortunately, because of that, they left Shia Islam, and they started even hating Shias. I know of a person that was there. He used to travel 2 hours by train, by bus, and then walk just so he could attend daily salat. After being rejected so many times by this place, he eventually left that place and joined the Salafis, who had another center. And then they had programs in his language. And now he was working with the famous, anti-Shia channels, one of them anti-Majus. And he spends his day trying to destroy the Shia faith after he had belief in it before. And this was a long time ago, 2012. But Alhamdulillah, things have changed now, and I see that that same Islamic Center is now offering programs in the native language of that place and also under the guidance of a different scholar. So this is one instance. Other thing, second problem, no one talks to them. They're alienated, they're made to feel unwelcome. They're already dealing with abandonment issues. Some of their families will kick them and their children out because when they accept Islam, they don't want anything to do with them anymore. Some cases, they're getting physically abused. I heard many Muslims had to sleep in their car or even sleep in the street with the small children because their family denounced them. So they're asking me, what do I do? How do I approach the situation? The convert is lonely, abandoned, rejected by the world that they knew before. They come to the Islamic Center as a foreigner, as a traveler, seeking help and support of their fellow believers of this new faith that they accepted, that they embraced. Only in most cases, they are shunned by the people in the Islamic Center. They're being turned away with no shame. In some cases, they have to go to sleep in homeless shelters or beg for money from disbelievers. And we have to know that sometimes these people have lost everything after they accepted Islam. When they saw the truth of Islam, they came to it and they gave everything away for this. And they're coming to us broken and they're looking for support. And you never know what a person is going through. And we have to ask ourselves, do we think that the Prophet would ignore them or treat them bad? Of course not. In Muharram, tears come from our eyes every year when we remember the emissary of Imam Hussein, Muslim and Aqil. He was also left all alone by the people of Kufa, and he was slaughtered without any friends or supporters. But yet, people are also leaving our own converts all alone, abandoned, and hopeless. So this has to change, and we have to be more welcoming and helpful towards them. And it is a right that we owe each other. Third thing, sometimes they're someone who's new to the center, they are accused of being spies. They are watching them. I mean, really, do we think that they would send a black or white American to be a spy in a Pakistani community or Arab community, for example? Of course not. They would send someone that looked just like them, that knew their language, had their trust, so they could get their secrets. It wouldn't send someone that's, totally different than them. The next thing is assume that they don't know anything. Example, they always asked if are you a Muslim? Then they find out they are Muslim already. They ask them if they know how to make wudu or simple things like this. This person may have been Muslim for 10 or 20 years already. You know, a better alternative to do than this is to welcome them to the Islamic Center. Tell them if you need any help, I'm at your service. Please don't hesitate. Just ask whatever you need. If you need to know something, ask questions. I am here. Other thing, they're accused of just coming to the mosque for food sometimes. One time, a Latino brother I knew, he went to Islamic Center for iftar one time in month of Ramadan, and the people had the nerve to ask him if he was there, only for the food, if it was because they didn't have any food at his church that night. Imagine being treated like that, and you are also a Muslim. Last thing, they are accused of not being sincere or that they are Muslim just for marriage, for example. I know of an American convert whose kids were asked if their mom really prayed. She's a Muslimah. The other ladies in community go to her kids and they say, "Is your mom really praying? Is your mom really fasting, or she is just faking it because being Muslim because she's married to a Middle Eastern man?" And her kids are made to be put through all of that, type of abuse and type of harassment. And on top of that, her children are Sadat. Her children are Sayyid because the man is Sayyid. It's disheartening to see this type of behavior coming from people who claim to follow Rasulullah that was sent as Rahmatul Alameen. And I've seen so many people who have gone their own way now because of how badly they were treated or unfairly the community dealt with them. And they don't even come around anymore, and they just stay in their houses or around other people who are like-minded individuals. So I brought all of these examples of how people are not being kind and merciful to their brother in faith when they are visiting an unfamiliar place, because this is a right that we owe each other. And I also faced many discriminatory events while traveling to different Islamic centers in different places. And I can also say that I have found many Islamic centers that were very welcoming towards me, such as your center is very welcoming. There are many other centers I can mention. I cannot say only the bad experiences. There are many good experiences too. The same is for when I immigrated here to Turkey. I didn't know what to expect from them. I didn't know if I would get treated bad, I would get treated good. I had no idea what is happening. But surprisingly, they were very warm and they were very receptive of us. They treated us like family. This small Hosseiniya we're a part of is very diverse now, and it consists mostly of Turks. Then there are Azeris, there are Pakistanis, there are Afghanis, Iraqis, Iranians, Americans, Latinos. We even have Russian Shias participating in the programs. I never thought I would see Russian Shia, but I have met at least three of them, and no one's discriminated against at all, and they are all welcomed as brothers under walayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. And this is how it should be. We all have this one thing that brings us together, which is walayat, and we all treat each other as family. So let's look at an example of how Imam Ali alayhi salam did in regards to Abu Dhar. So Abu Dhar was from tribe of Ghafar. They were well known for causing trouble and robbing caravans. And one day Abu Dhar met a man coming from Mecca. And talking to this man, he found out that there was a man in Mecca that said there is only one God. People were very upset with this because it went against their idols. So, this statement, La ilaha illallah, made Abu Dhar start reflecting to himself. This news sparked, it put a spark in his heart of guidance, which sent him in search for this person who was sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Abu Dhar was told that this new prophet was usually found to be praying near the Kaaba. So he went in search of that prophet. He didn't see him, so he waited until night came. Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam passed by Abu Dhar, asked him if he was a traveler. Abu Dhar said, "Yes, I'm a traveler." Imam Ali alayhi salam invited him to his house, and he stayed with him. Abu Dhar went out the next day and searched for Rasulullah again, but still was not successful. Imam Ali alayhi salam found him again, took him to his home. This happened 3 days in a row. Abu Dhar finally confessed what he's doing in Mecca to begin with, and Ali alayhi salam, he assured Abu Dhar that he could help him, and he took him to the house of Rasulullah. So Abu Dhar was so captivated and enamored by the Prophet, and he felt himself falling in love with the akhlaq and the personality of Rasulullah, that he listened to the tenets of Islam, and he accepted this new faith. So he left the Prophet's house and marched straight to the Kaaba. And he said, "O Quraysh, I bear witness, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah." The idol worshippers beat up Abu Dhar very bad until he fainted. He woke up and he said it again until they beat him again, almost till he died. And then Abbas stepped in, the uncle of the Prophet, and he stopped them from that. And then this didn't even stop him. He was ready to do it again. But Rasulullah ordered Abu Dhar to go back to his tribe and teach them Islam. When Abu Dhar returned, he became successful in converting his entire tribe to the path of Rasulullah. And we notice from this that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't shun Abu Dhar because of where he came from, saying that, "Oh, I don't want this type of people in my religion." He didn't do that. We see that the Prophet did the opposite, and he welcomed Abu Dhar with open arms. He taught him what he needed to know in order to make a positive change in his life. So Abu Dhar became close friend of Rasulullah, also a loyal companion of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he continued benefiting from the guidance of Rasulullah and followed him and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, and he followed them in their ways. And through learning and applying the ways of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, he reached such a high status that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa said, "If you want to see the piety of Isa, then look at Abu Dhar." Subhanallah. It shows us that if we stick to the path of Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt, it's possible for us to reform ourselves and change our bad habits into good ones, regardless of where we came from. It's possible to overcome a corrupt lifestyle that we may have been living previously by taking lesson from the example of Abu Dhar. We can abandon a tainted past, which is full of wrongdoings and sins and all of these things, and adopt the way of Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, and we can attain great heights in the pleasure of Allah. And we see that, Abu Dhar came from a family of robbers, yet he ended up becoming one of the most truthful of people. Rasulullah said that from amongst the companions, there was no one under the sky more truthful than Abu Dhar. Even though he came from a bad area filled with injustice, he was able to turn into a beacon for justice. Subhanallah. And last story I want to share about this being welcoming and being kind to your brother in faith and being merciful to him when he is in a foreign land is a story about Sheikh Muhammad Al Hassan from the city of Najaf. Maybe I mentioned before some years back, I don't know, but I mention again for the sake of this topic. So he was studying to become an alim in Najaf, and he had three problems. The first one, he is coughing up blood from his chest. The second one, he was poor. The third one, he wanted to marry a lady, but her family refused. So he lost all hope for his situation and his problem to get solved. So he decided to go to the masjid in Kufa every Tuesday for 40 weeks. It was common from amongst students that whoever visits the masjid in Kufa for 40 weeks, it will be honored to see Imam Mahdi, Ajallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. This young man, he began this journey, hoping to see the Imam and explain to him these three problems that he had. And, from Najaf to Kufa is maybe 15, 20 minutes by car. But imagine this time there's no car and he is traveling by foot or some sort of animal or something like this, probably by foot, because the students mostly they not having any money. So it's difficult, you know. So the last night came, he's been going for 40 weeks. He's on the 40th week. It's dark, it's cold, it's windy that night, and he couldn't stay inside the masjid due to him coughing up blood. He didn't want to cough up najasa in the masjid, so he sat at the the doorstep of the masjid. And he thought to himself, it's the last night, but he didn't have the honor of seeing Imam. This man, he used to drink some coffee. So he lit a fire, he made some coffee. As he was making this coffee, he saw someone approaching him. Sheikh Hassan, he said he wasn't really comfortable with this man approaching him because he thought to himself, maybe this Arab man, he'll drink all my coffee and nothing will be left for me. So then he says, when the man came, he greeted me by my name. I was surprised. How did he know my name? So I asked him, which tribe are you from? Are you from so and so tribe? He said no, and he kept saying no. And after he mentioned a lot of different tribes, finally he said, "Well, what brought you over here?" I told him, why? What do you want? Why do you ask me what brought me here? So the man said, what harm is it if you tell me we're just sitting outside of masjid? Just let's talk. So he says, I poured some coffee for him. I offered it to him. He took a sip from it, then he gave it back to me, and he told me to drink after me. So I took the cup, I drank from it. Then I started telling him about my problems. I told him how I was coughing up blood from my chest, how poor I was, how I had fallen in love with a woman, but her family won't marry her to me. Some ulama, they misled me. They told me that if I go to, Imam Mahdi to get my problems solved, they told me to come to this masjid in Kufa, 40 weeks, all my problems are solved. So I've been through so much difficulty to come here every week. And this is the last night, but I haven't seen anything yet. He says, while I was unaware of what is going on, the man, he just told me, as for your chest, it is healed. As for the woman, you will marry her soon. And as for the poverty, you will remain poor. So when I woke up in the morning, he says, I felt my chest had been healed. And a week later, I married that lady. However, I remained poor. So we see that from this story, it demonstrates how Imam Mahdi, Ajal Allah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, is there to help us. But we have to ask ourselves, do we truly ask for his help? It also teaches us to train our hearts to be welcoming to everyone and to embrace them when they come. This young man, he wasn't comfortable when the man approached him because he didn't want to share his coffee with the stranger. Had he known this was the Imam of his time, would he have felt the same way? So we have to be kind, we have to be merciful, we have to be generous towards everyone because we don't know who we are dealing with. Maybe we have met the Imam of our time and we don't know. Maybe it was like in this instance and we didn't know. Maybe we met one of the companions of Imam, we didn't know. Imagine if we had treated that person bad and we didn't know who they were. And we come to find out later that we treated the Imam of our time bad, or we treated the companion of the Imam of our time bad. How would we feel? How could we live with ourselves if we know that? So we have to treat everyone kind, be welcoming to everyone, even if they are a stranger and we don't know anything about them. Our right towards our fellow believer is to welcome them and be kind and merciful to them when they are traveling in a foreign land. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us be kinder and more merciful to each other and become united as brothers and sisters under the banner of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad alayhi salam. We end with the dua. ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. Sadaqallahu al-Ali al-Azim. Allah says in Surah Hashr, Ayat 10, O our Lord, forgive us and our brothers in faith who preceded us, and clear out our heart from any ill will that we have against our fellow believers. Lord, you are the most compassionate and the most merciful. صلى على محمد وآل محمد.